Okay, thank all of you for coming here today. We'll start with Mr. Patrick Riley Brown. Mr. Brown was arrested on August the 5th on two outstanding warrants. The display you see here were the weapons that were seized. There were two outstanding warrants on failure to appear, fleeing and eluding, and carrying a concealed firearm illegally. He has, as you can well imagine, a tremendous number of charges that will be pending. Also, a sizable amount of drugs were found in the house. After the press conference today, if you would like to speak to some of our investigators that were involved with the case, be more than happy to have those ladies and gentlemen talk to you individually for specifics on the case. Second case we want to update you on was our recent home invasion. Of these individuals, we have 4 that are currently in custody. This gentleman is still at large. We appreciate your assistance in helping us get the word out. This young man here this is the gentleman, Trayvon was the one that was shot, or excuse me, Taquan. Taquan was shot in the stomach during the commission of this crime. Would also update you on the old Corey Field shooting, the double homicide. We hope to have more information either this afternoon or sometime tomorrow, giving you an update on that ongoing case. Our investigators are making a tremendous amount of progress on that. By the way, on the second case here, all the individuals we have listed, that was the home invasion over on Gardenia Circle, and that was on May the 5th of this year. Address was 8365. With that, I'd like to introduce Chief Deputy Chip Simmons, who's with our Operations Division. All the investigators and patrol folks work for him, and then after that, Mr. John Mulchan from the State Attorney's Office will speak briefly also. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. I think that, as Sheriff Morgan mentioned, that when you have cases like this, you can't do it alone. You have to have assistance, and you have to have the hard work of the investigators with the Sheriff's Office. Bruce Harris was the investigator that handled the Gardenia Circle. Bruce is here in the audience, and we also have here Mike Gilmore, and we have Robert Canada, who also played a great deal in the investigation of both of these investigations, as well as Commander Tharp. We say all the time that if you do not engage in high-risk behaviors, you're less likely to be the victim of this type of crime. You see by the number of guns here that this is a high-risk behavior. You see by all the drugs and all the money and stuff over here, this too is high-risk behavior. The Gardenia Circle, the shooting that happened in our Gardenia Circle, 3 people entered the house and they shot one person as they lay in the bed. And then her son comes out and starts shooting as well, end up shooting Taquan Warren, where we were able to find him. When you show up at the hospital with a bullet in your stomach, we're going to find you, and we're going to talk to you, and we're going to clear these cases. These are very dangerous individuals. Again, and we talk about 2 different cases, but in this one case we had a number of guns, and in this case we had guns and we had someone kicking in the door. Again, we think all of these are gun-related and drug-related. And as I said earlier, I'll say it again, if you do not engage in high-risk behaviors, you're less likely to be injured in such high-risk behavior. And with that, I'll turn it over to John Mulchan.
Yeah, I'd like to, again, thank the Escambia County Sheriff's Office for their diligent work in this effort. As always, we work with them, and they basically contact us when these things are going on. We've assigned special prosecutors, especially on the home invasion case. They've already been meeting. We have a special prosecutor assigned to that case, and as you can imagine, we're going to see significant incarcerative sentences based upon this type of behavior. This is a home invasion robbery type of thing that is extraordinarily dangerous to the public and everyone. And then, you know, the nature of it is self-evident from that standpoint. As far as Mr. Brown is concerned, I think you just have to look at the weapons to know what those are all capable of in this situation. Again, we'll assign a special prosecutor to that case also. And again, we've worked very closely with the Sheriff's Office in this. Getting involved early on it helps us to build a case to basically be successful, and we certainly appreciate that from the Sheriff's Office.
On the case with Mr. Brown, not so much the case of the home invasion and the double homicide that we're currently working, we would also like to thank the members of our community. As with all things, while we depend a great amount on scientific evidence today, whether it's DNA or those things that we collect at each and every crime scene, There's very few things that support more and are more critically important to just good old-fashioned police work, and that's the citizens that reach out to our community, provide us information and leads that all of our officers follow up on. And so that played a significant role, especially in the apprehension of Mr. Brown, and again in the ongoing case with the double homicide, which we hope to close out very soon. With that, we'll stop on the formal part of that, and we'll answer a few questions if you may have any.
Are the guns and the drugs for
Mr. Brown?
Brown?
Yes.
Can you kind of break down, do you know about how many guns there were and the type of drugs?
Yeah, 14 firearms, I'm sorry, 14 firearms. You'll see a combination over here of meth, heroin, fentanyl, lots of Oxycontin, a lot of pills. Any heroin in that group? And also some heroin. So he had a mixture of drugs.
Do we have a dollar amount of how much that could be worth?
Do we, Chief, have an estimate on that? Do we know for street value on the drugs? No?
Not yet.
Not yet.
And where was he keeping all of these items?
Inside his home. So the drugs and the guns and all were inside his home. When we went there to serve the warrant, made entry, the officers saw what was in plain view, backed out, called the state attorney's office, got the appropriate entry authorization through the warrants, re-entered the home, made the arrest.
And the guns, were they stolen?
There are some stolen firearms in this group, yes. A couple I know out of Alabama. So. Any other questions?
Did he
Yes.
have permits for any of the guns?
No.
All illegal.
Yes. To the best of my knowledge, he did not legally own any of the firearms.
And do investigators have any idea, was he selling the guns, or was he intending to use them, or was he a drug dealer for protection?
I wouldn't speculate on that. You can just well imagine firearms are terrific barter on the street. It's as good as gold. You can swap firearms for drugs, about anything you want. Anything else?
In the home invasion, I think I heard you say there were 3 people
Yes.
that entered. How were the other 2 people involved?
This was our driver. This individual ran from the scene, did not enter the home. These 3 individuals entered the home. Taquan was the one that, after the home invasion, the struggle, we believe, we know he was shot in the stomach because he reported to the hospital with a gunshot. So these 3 entered the home. This one is still at large. We need the public's assistance in locating that individual.
Armed and dangerous.
And yes, as Chief Simmons reminded me, thank you, Chief, he is to be considered armed and dangerous. So do not make contact. If you have information or knowledge of where this individual is, call 911. Any other? Yes.
On the old Corey Field Road case,
Mhm.
I know you brought Mr. Simpkins in only for questioning. I think I saw that you guys were able to get a hold of him, but
He was a person of interest, yes. He was not a suspect. He was a person of interest. He's been questioned and released.
do you have any other persons of interest that you're looking for?
I will not speak to that issue at this time. We are hoping, again, to draw a conclusion to that case very quickly, hopefully as soon as tomorrow.
Did you guys get a lot of tips from the people about the car?
Yes, tremendous number.
If you can talk about, I know earlier you said how important that is. I guess how important were those tips to finding, getting a hold of him? And I don't know if you have located that white car.
I tell you what I'm going to do. Chief, why don't you answer that question, because all the operators are working with the chief on this case. Go ahead.
Yes, what we do initially is put all the information that we have out, especially if we have a video. In this case, we put out the white car, and we asked the public's assistance. So we were inundated with information saying this white car, this white car. So with hours of investigation, we zeroed in on that, and we have discussed some people associated with that white car. So right now, we're just asking that if anyone has any other information, we've already discussed this case with a couple of people of interest. We do have some other people we intend to talk to, but what we want is the public's help and to let us know if they know anything else, whether it's about this white car or any other car that can aid in our investigation.
I don't know if you guys are releasing any more details about the case. Yesterday, we talked to the family members, and they said that the father and son may have been ambushed.
Yeah, we won't speak to that. When we intend to have a press conference when we conclude the case, make the arrests, and of course through coordination with the state attorney's office. It'd be more appropriate to answer those questions at that time. I think we will have an answer for you then.
And what would your message be to people in the community who may be engaging in this type of behavior?
Well, as the chief said, we emphasize in the Neighborhood Watch Academy, in our Citizens Law Enforcement Academy, and all the presentations throughout the county that the chief and I do, and other members of the sheriff's office staff, and I'll even draw the state attorney into this. If you're not engaged in high-risk behavior, if you're not selling drugs, you're not involved in prostitution, you're not involved in burglaries, etc., the likelihood or probability of you being a victim of a violent crime is about slim and none. We find that those individuals, again, that are engaged in high-risk behavior, it's also violent in nature. And so you're going to end up being on the wrong end of a firearm. And so most of our deaths in Escambia County, especially in the area of crime, are drug-related, involving firearms and the commission of felonies. So, don't involve yourself in high-risk behavior. Go back to what your grandparents told you and your parents. Nothing good happens after a certain time of night. And that's true. The old sayings and the old rules still apply, whether we like to admit it or not. Any other questions?
Yeah, you mentioned that on where Warren was shot. Can you tell us where he was shot and his condition? I missed that.
He was shot in the stomach.
Right.
Okay. We can't speak to updates where he's at in the hospital or any of those things. We can't speak to the medical side of it. Yeah. But he is still with us. Yeah, he's been remotely booked. So he's in the hospital. He's been remotely booked. Okay. Yeah, John. Yeah, please.
I think, to echo what the sheriff is saying, that the criminal element that deals with these guns have developed, and if you were familiar with the TV series The Wire, there was a figure called Omar who began robbing drug dealers. That was his role. That was his job. And we see that today throughout the United States, and that is why you see a person like Mr. Brown with these weapons. He's there, that's how he protects those drugs. That's what he uses to barter with these drugs. So in essence, these guns that we see here are a direct result of him trying to protect himself and his product from those guys who will go in there to take his money and his drugs. And we see that over and over again. And the sheriff has preached this, I think, about every time we've had one of these. But that's exactly what we're seeing, is the Omars of the world have basically taken this is the reality of this. We have people out there that basically rob drug dealers. It's high risk, very dangerous, and dangerous to the public because, in essence, what if they hit the wrong house from that standpoint? And we have seen that.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper and quicker to drive cross town or drive cross county and rip off another drug dealer than it is to go to Miami or New Orleans or one of the distribution points for drugs. And that's what results in a lot of our gun crime in Escambia County, is drug dealers ripping off other drug dealers. So,
How does it make you feel to get, these weapons and drugs off the street?
well, obviously tremendously well, but we're sticking fingers in the dike. The dike's leaking, and we're going to run out of fingers and toes at some point. But it's only due to the professionalism and diligence of the men and women of the Escambia County Sheriff's Office that we do as well as we do. But trust me, we put this one to bed. There's 3 like him that are popping up right now. It's a never-ending struggle. This is like consuming sustenance. You don't drink water once and say I'm done. You have to drink water to sustain life. And that's how we look at law enforcement. It's a continual process. It's always evolving. The methods and those things change, but you must remain engaged all the time. Any other questions? Thank you all very much.